Hello everyone, I'm Tim, the Minnesota firefighter with the arm form of melanoma cancer. This weekend is a pretty big deal for me because yesterday marked exactly 2 years since I received my preliminary cancer diagnosis. On one hand, looking back, it's hard to believe that it's already been 2 years. On the other hand, so much has happened around me that it seems hard to believe that it could all be packed into such a short period of time. Over the past couple years, I've described my cancer journey as magical. That's definitely an odd and funny way to describe a life-altering and potentially life-ending situation, but nonetheless, it has been a magical journey. Magical so much that I refer to myself as the spoiled brat of cancer patients. I'll share more on magical thoughts and blessings in a little bit. As you may recall, my cancer journey began even before I knew it. In the fall of 2018, I experienced symptoms that I chalked up to hemorrhoids. Like so many people, including most firefighters, I assumed it was nothing and just needed a little time to resolve. However, minor discomfort became very uncomfortable to the point of being a frequent pain in the ass. Literally a pain in the ass. At that point, Madeline, my chief of home operations, first suggested and then insisted that I see a doctor. That was the informal start of a trip down the road to officially begin my cancer journey. I've never been a big fan of scary movies and the kind of scary surprises that sometimes come with Halloween. However, it was October 31st and Halloween of 2018 when I first met Dr. Chow for an office visit. As I've said before, I didn't expect it to be anything more than an angry hemorrhoid. I expected the doctor would do a quick snip, stitch, good as new fix to a rogue hemorrhoid. Instead, a very brief and painful examination took things in another direction when the doctor said he believed that I had a cancerous mass and would need a biopsy to confirm. That was exactly 2 years ago this weekend. Late 2018 found me and the Chief of Home Operations experiencing a whirlwind series of appointments interspersed with periods of waiting for answers. First, there were scans using MRI and a PET-CT imaging, which clearly indicated that something was not right in the bottom of my alimentary tract. So in some ways, you could say it appeared all of my troubles were behind me. When I saw Dr. Chow for my initial biopsy, he recommended scheduling oncology appointments because he was pretty certain that imaging showed cancer. There was a belief that it would most likely be an easy-to-treat squamous form of cancer that would require radiation and chemotherapy, but no surgery beyond the initial biopsy. Okay, turns out it wasn't squamous, but rather a very rare form of melanoma that forms in mucosal tissue. Very rare indeed, because it was also amelanotic, meaning it didn't have any pigmentation like regular melanoma. Mathematically speaking, it was so rare that only about 350 new cases are diagnosed in the U.S. each year. There are about 350 million people in the U.S., so yeah, that makes me 1 in a million. But frankly, this was not the lottery I wanted to win. In 2018, treatment of melanoma was considered very difficult with an extremely low long-term survival rate. Traditional use of radiation and chemotherapy simply did not have very good outcomes. Receiving the biopsy results was where the magical cancer experience begins. Because I followed Dr. Chow's suggestion, my first oncology appointment was just a couple days after receiving the biopsy results. Keep in mind that magical doesn't mean it isn't still a roller coaster ride. Most cancer journeys include ups and downs with a few twists and turns along the way. My first visit with Dr. Kubiak was not exactly a pregame pep talk either. However, I had no idea that it was actually a blessing in disguise. I learned that Dr. Kubiak had consulted colleagues in the Twin Cities and all agreed that my form of cancer was special, and a consult was arranged with the Mayo Clinic. Less than a week later, the chief and I were traveling to the Mayo Clinic and met Dr. Yan, who works with a group of oncologists dedicated to treating melanoma. By that time, we had already combed the internet for information regarding melanoma, and it wasn't looking good. The traditional use of radiation and chemotherapy is simply not effective in the treatment of melanoma, especially if it's metastasized. We soon learned that information on the internet regarding cancer treatment is often outdated and inaccurate due to the amazingly fast pace of research, discovery, and development of new treatments. That was definitely the case with melanoma treatment. Researchers have developed new classes of drugs, including immunotherapy, that are being used to treat melanoma. Dr. Yan recommended that I receive a form of immunotherapy treatment that is done in 2 phases. In the first phase, I received 4 rounds of ipilimumab and nivolumab, spaced 3 weeks apart. The ipilimumab works to activate the immune system by targeting CTLA-4 protein receptors. Nivolumab is targeted therapy that serves as a human-programmed death receptor 1 blocking antibody. All right, what the heck does that mean? In simple terms, the ipilimumab acts to rev up my immune system and stimulate the production of T cells. Think of it like deploying more crews to fight on a fire scene. Cancer can hide from T cells like a fire burning inside a wall or other void space. Nivolumab acts to strip away the places where cancer is hiding, like firefighters overhauling a room to find hot spots and put out the fire. In the spring of 2019, I completed the first phase of treatment after receiving 4 rounds of dual immunotherapy treatment using ipilimumab and nivolumab. The second phase transitioned to receiving only nivolumab without the ipilimumab once every 2 weeks. In October 2019, I had a follow-up visit with Dr. McWilliams at the Mayo Clinic after completing another PET CT scan. This is where I learned about the term complete response, because there was no longer any sign of cancer activity in my swimsuit area where everything originally started. Based on available safety data related to melanoma, Dr. McWilliams said it would be reasonable to transition to receiving nivolumab once every 4 weeks instead of every other week. So nearly a year into treatment, I received the excellent news of complete response to therapy. However, I continued getting an updated PET CT once every 3 months and receiving treatment with nivolumab. To be certain, complete response does not mean cancer-free. Over the last year, we've also been keeping an eye on some activity at the base of my tongue. I see Dr. Anderson, an otolaryngologist, to monitor that because it's his area of expertise. Once a quarter, Dr. Anderson reviews my latest scans and then slides a scope up my nose and down my throat to take a look around. Certainly gives context to me for the phrase, up your nose with a rubber hose. On the other hand, he usually lets me watch on an attached video monitor. October 21st of this year, we traveled back to the Mayo Clinic for the first time since last January. Due to COVID-19, my last 2 PET CT scans were completed at Methodist Hospital in the Twin Cities. This time, we completed a new PET CT at Mayo Clinic prior to meeting with Dr. Becerra from the melanoma group. He noted there's no clear precedent for how long I should continue receiving nivolumab, but did say that 1 year from the point of complete response would seem reasonable. There's also the thought of stopping at the 2-year point of immunotherapy treatment, which is coming up later this year. Regardless of treatment uncertainty at this point, Dr. Becerra did use the term remission during this latest Mayo visit. If you were to ask me, it's a pretty nice anniversary gift. However, we're also continuing to monitor a metastatial lymph node in my chest, so Dr. Becerra recommended another 3 months of nivolumab, reviewing the next PET CT, and then discuss stopping treatment and placing me on surveillance. Surveillance. Sounds like I'm being watched for nefarious activity. Actually, it means continuing to monitor once a quarter or semi-annually moving forward. So this past week, I completed infusion number 31 with over 30 separate blood draws and over 40 IV placements for treatment and other procedures. I feel blessed beyond belief at how well things have unfolded. I consider myself the spoiled brat of cancer treatment because my experience has seen very few complications. My treatment day typically finds me starting the day with a visit to my local clinic for a blood draw on the way to work. Later in the day, Madeline meets me and we either go to the Maple Grove Infusion Center or drive to the Franschhoek Cancer Center to see a practitioner and receive an infusion. I've not had a pick or a port to access my veins, so every blood draw and treatment is done with a fresh needle stick. But that's a small price to pay for not having to deal with the complications that come with picks and ports. I experienced some fatigue early on in treatment and again this summer, but I also have not been as active. Haven't been to the health club since before COVID restrictions, so I'm just not as active, and the exercise part is kind of slid. Otherwise, I've only had minor side effects, not including the vitiligo that shows treatment is working. I know that not everyone experiencing cancer has my magical journey. I've been blessed to be in the right place at the right time with the right doctors and the right treatment plan. I'm grateful for the gifts that treatment has allowed me to experience and the future that lies ahead of me. I will continue to provide these updates as I find out more, certainly after my next visit to Mayo, and we'll go from there. Thank you.